Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Scary Stories video, and today we're getting into some more subscriber submitted stories. I love this series and you guys seem to love it too, and I'll keep making these videos as long as you guys keep sending emails to the email, and the email's on screen now. Please send in your scary stories. I appreciate it so much. I read every single one, and yeah, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate every single one of you. You're the best, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And today's stories are so scary. Each one gave me goosebumps. Each one was scary. Each one was frightening. And I'm gonna be honest, you're gonna want to stick around. I appreciate you all, like I said. And without further ado, let's get into some frightening, scary stories. Hi Snook, I hope you're well. My name is Agustina. I know, odd name. I've been following your channel for some time now, and I've really become keen on these stories you have shared with us. That's why I decided to share one with you, which is really odd to me even nowadays. And it's true. This happened 15 years ago. My uncle was building a house in what used to be a remote area in the countryside. Up until this point, he had built something that looked like a small house meant for holding parties. No beds, just a huge table, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a couch all in one space. This house, not so, is made almost entirely of glass. This is important. It will make more sense soon. Almost right next to this place, he was building a much more sizable house. However, he finished what was going to be his room first, in the first floor, while the ground floor was left unfinished for a long time. My mom and I used to sleep in that room in the first floor, while the ground floor was locked with a piece of wood. That's all the safety we could count on. One day, almost a year after my grandma passed away, she used to love this place. One of the reasons why my uncle bought this land and built a house here to begin with. We were sitting outside, my mom and I, in the porch of this unfinished house. Our idea for the evening was to play Scrabble, like any other night. Given that we were alone, my uncle was on vacation, my dad was working, and my brother was with our cousins in their house for the summer. We set the table for the game, and on the board. Once we were ready, we started taking some keys randomly to start playing. I don't know if the rules are all the same everywhere, but to start playing, we needed to take 7 letters, something we did without looking, chilling while talking with my mom. She never looked at her letters while talking, but was automatically setting them before looking to them, and think of that word to create. My native language is Spanish, so I'll explain what's coming so everyone can understand. Once my mom looked back at her letters, she turned white and suddenly stopped talking. When I asked her what was wrong, she turned her letters on me, and the word ciudado looked back at me. Mind you, this word means danger or beware in Spanish. My mother didn't make this word. She never took a look at her game. We both went silent, unable to stop looking at it. I've already mentioned my grandma before. The truth is that, since she passed away, we've all gone through some unexplainable episodes in this place. It's like she has been around this house since she left. What was happening at that moment felt like yet another of these events. What was she trying to warn us about? We immediately turned vigilant, paying more attention to our surroundings. My uncle's house had no fence, and in front of us there was a river, which was lacking tons of water at that moment, given the lack of rain. Behind that river, there were the mountains. After what felt like a couple of minutes, we heard some steps in front of us, which of course made us jump in our seats. The area before us is quite dark, given that this house had no reflectors or any sort of strong lights for us to see what was happening in the wilderness. My mother yelled, "Who's there?" We heard a male voice from the darkness saying, "Sorry, miss. I didn't want to scare you." And from the trail that goes down to the river, a guy appeared. The guy was dressed like a homeless person, and he had a small bag hanging from his shoulder to his waist. I didn't mention this before, but this area was filled with what we call hippies, people who live in the mountains, in tents or really humble houses, and tend to engage in all kinds of substances. Up until this point, there were not too many stories of them occupying houses or being violent like now, but we all knew they were around. This guy approached us a bit more. As my mother got up to stand in the first line of the porch, he said, "I was just wondering if you could give me some bread. I am really hungry after walking so much." My mother came to the table where we were playing, took a bag with pastries, and walked halfway down. So the guy came closer to the light, just to see him better. He approached the tree where my mom hung the bag and said, "Do you perhaps have some water too?" She returned to our table and took an empty bottle to fill it with some tap that was near, without disappearing from sight. The guy then turned to look at me. I was 11 years old. However, being raised in a difficult neighborhood, I wasn't quite scared of people and was rather bold. My uncle had a machete used for cutting branches and any wild plants around, which my mother kept around us, and I grabbed as some kind of reflex. Once my mother returned to meet this guy with the water, the guy looked at her and said, "So, you two are alone here?" By just writing this, I still get goosebumps like the ones I got back then. I felt shivers fall through my spine after hearing that. My mother, trying to keep her cool, said, "No, we are not." "Why?" To which he answered, "It just seems so lonely here. And I saw no man around. I just got curious." My mother turned his back on him and said, "Maybe you should mind your own business a bit more," as she walked up the stairs back to the porch. The guy glanced at me once more before going back into the darkness. My mom, now showing how unsettled she felt, told me to hurry back into that little house my uncle used for parties. We locked the main door and blocked the entrance of the side door with a chair. Since we had no car at the time, we were practically on our own. No one was residing in the houses nearby. I was sitting in front of the many glass doors when I saw this guy again, standing on the stairs to the porch, looking through the bushes. I started feeling scared. The phone had no signal, given the lack of antennas in the area. We were pretty much on our own, with this guy who was now openly stalking us. My mother did her best to try and pretend there were other people in the house with us by opening the only window we had and yelling my dad's name. The guy could literally see everything that was going on inside. Remember, it was a house made almost completely by glass. After 20 minutes of trying to call the police unsuccessfully, I saw my mother grab the machete and stand in front of the window. The guy was standing on the porch, looking straight at us. We could finally see his face, which was stoic, but somehow ready to fight if needed. He still had his bag on, and his face looked so dirty, even though the river was calm and could have used it at any time. He was tall, but not too built. 10 minutes later, the guy climbed down the stairs again to disappear from our sight, and we tried to have some kind of dinner without being able to unglue our eyes from the glass and looking everywhere around to see if this man was somewhere else near us. It felt like being at a zoo, where we were there for someone's entertainment. Once we thought we were sure this guy wasn't around, we left this little house and went to the bigger one, practically ran to the first floor, to lock ourselves there. In this room, we actually managed to get some signal to call the police. However, they told us that only one unit was available for the town, which was busy patrolling the mountains. My mother decided to turn off all the lights, machete in hand, while we tried to hear any minor noise that could show to us we were not alone. Silence. There was silence for an hour or so. My mom was checking the door every now and then. Yes, this door also was completely made of glass, to see if anything appeared on the stairs that led to my uncle's bedroom. Around 2 a.m., my mom got up to check once again, and stopped in her tracks, staring at the stairs. She got so close to the glass while holding the machete that I got scared for a second. I suppose her instinct kicked in, more intensively than any other moment of the night. I tried to get to the door myself, but my mother yelled like I never heard before. Nonetheless, I moved closer to her once again and looked through the glass. The guy was standing on those stairs, smiling. I can't describe how frightened I was. My mother pushed me away and threw her cell phone at me. I called the police once again, but my mother started yelling, interrupting the operator. The operator got so concerned she told us she would summon the car again to the town, but that could take some time, given that they would be coming down the mountains. From that moment on, my mother continued yelling all kinds of things to this guy, completely out of herself. I saw her go quiet before she breathed out, "He's not here anymore," before the police arrived. The guy came to her door once again and tried opening the door. He was trying to pick up something out of his bag, but the sound of the police interrupted him. He ran out of the house, while the police opened the front door to the yard and heard my mother as she opened the window from the bedroom. "The guy was up here now. Get him!" The officers searched the area and told us not to leave the room under any circumstances. After a certain time, one of them came back and just yelled, "We found him, miss. We'll be back soon." I wouldn't be able to know how long, but we heard their car leaving, just like that. A couple of hours later, these same officers returned to the house and asked us to come down. We did so, and once we did, we saw both of them looking concerned. The older officer told us they managed to find the guy, hiding near the river between some rocks and bushes. After checking him, they saw the guy was completely high, and inside his bag, he was carrying a gun. They also told us they'd been looking for this guy, since he had inappropriately touched many people who visited the river in the past days. I don't know what this guy's intentions were, but one thing was clear. It wasn't anything good. I still burn my head thinking about that game of Scrabble and how it warned us of what was coming. Needless to say, my mother and I never stayed alone there ever again. I will never forget that face and his nasty smile. We should rarely be afraid of the dead. Be afraid of the living. Thank you for your time, Snook, and for all your work. Hi, Snook. I just found your channel, and I love the viewer submission stories. I often listen to them while doing things around the house or on long car rides. I've got numerous stories, but this one I think is the scariest. So this would have been in the early 2000s. My family and I used to live in Illinois, and would often go camping when we were kids. We'd mostly stay at White Pine State Park in Mount Morris, Illinois. At the time, my sister would have been around 5, and I would have been around 7 or 8. We had pulled into the entry of the campgrounds and saw that the normally packed on the weekend campsites were almost nearly empty. My family shrugged it off as lucky and went about setting up our site. Now for context, our site was located across the way from a curve in the road that went through the campground. We set up and go about the usual camping activities, playing games, catching lightning bugs at dusk, roasting marshmallows, etc. Eventually, it came time for bed. So our tent we had 3 compartments, rooms, something. So it had a large main section and 2 small tunnels in either side. One side we kept food and clothes in, and the other side is where my sister and I slept. We all got tucked in for the night, and given our light sources, my parents used to give us these super bright military-grade glow sticks when we would camp, bright enough to see and not get spooked, but dim enough to not disturb sleep. We all lay down and fell asleep when really late at night, like 2 a.m., according to my mom. She woke up with just an odd feeling. She looks over to check on my sister and I, and sees my sister sitting up. She questioned her to see if everything was okay, but my mom said that my sister turned her head to look at her, and with all the calmness in the world whispered, "The devil is behind you." My mom, rightfully panicked, thought maybe my sister was half asleep and dreaming or was seeing my dad, but my dad was still asleep. My mom said she got this overwhelming feeling we needed to leave and woke my dad and I up, loaded us in the car, and drove home that night, leaving all of our stuff behind till morning. The next morning, we returned to the campground, and the park ranger asked if we were the ones staying in number whichever it was. My parents said yes, and the ranger said something along the lines of, "Oh, the ranger who was here last night said you left in a hurry. Was everything okay?" My parents relayed what happened, and from what they said, the ranger looked a little spooked. The ranger then told my parents that about 2 weeks prior in the site across from ours, on the curve, a man was run over while sleeping in his tent by a drunk driver who missed the curve and was killed on site. That's why the campground was empty. We never stayed there again after that, and my sister has no memory of waking up or saying that to my mom. Coincidence? Maybe. Creepy? Yes. If this doesn't make it to a video, I still appreciate you reading. I could fill a book with all the spooky and creepy things I've experienced. If you have any questions or want to hear more, you're welcome to reach out. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for reading. Sam. And thank you so much, Sam, for sending in the story. I had goosebumps when during this entire story. I did not expect it to take that turn. I just don't know what I even thought. That was so scary, so disturbing, so creepy. It was so unpredictable. You know, I read so many stories now. I've read hundreds of stories, and this one just took a turn I was not seeing at all. It just felt so authentic, so scary. Your little sister saying that creeped me out enough. But then the guy who died, like driving there, and he died right there and ran someone over, like goosebumps. That was a good story. Thank you so much. If you have any other stories, please send them to the email, and please say Sam sent them. I really appreciate it. Guys and everyone watching, comment down below if you thought it was as scary as I did. But yeah, that creeped me the hell out and gave me crazy goosebumps. Yeah, that was a creepy story. Luckily, you guys are all right, but you know, that's definitely unsettling. Hello, Snook. Before I start, I'd like to say that I enjoy your content, mainly the Skinwalker and cryptid related stories, as they are pretty entertaining. Fortunately for me, this story doesn't contain any creatures of the sort, as anything like that would be terrifying to run into for real. Still though, what I want to share might be appealing to some, even if it isn't inherently over the top scary. I also apologize if it is a little long. Anyways, let's begin. It is 2009 in Cleveland, Ohio. I was 4 years old and living with my parents and sister in a big, beautiful blue house, 2 stories tall, standing amongst a bunch of other similar houses in a typical suburban neighborhood. It was a safe area, full of kids and kind people. There was even a park nearby that me and my sister would go to often. At the time, there wasn't much that could scare me or cause trauma, but that did not stop me from experiencing nightmares on a regular basis after my parents put me to bed. Nowadays, I can chalk most of it up to just being usual night terrors that children tend to experience when they don't have a full grasp on the world yet, as everything unknown can seem scary when you're very young. Despite that, there was one nightmare I had that was so bizarre. I cannot simply call it a night terror that an innocent kid's mind can just come up with. Unlike other nightmares, which I have forgotten over time, I can still remember this one clearly to this day. It started with me alone at the park in my neighborhood. I was obviously not aware that I was dreaming. However, I knew immediately that something was wrong because the sky around me was blood red. Not the kind of red you can see in a sunrise or sunset that mix with different colors to create a pretty display. No, it was a solid red. The sky was also filled with dark storm clouds, although there wasn't any rain or wind. Of course, this was terrifying to me. Even a 4-year-old knows that the sky really only comes in blue and black most of the time. But what came next was even worse. As I scanned the sky, I saw something peeking out through a break in the clouds. As the clouds moved away, it came into full view. It was the sun, much larger than it usually was and pitch black in color, almost like a full solar eclipse but missing the orange outline. Once I saw it, I was quickly filled with dread, like I knew something was very twisted and evil about it in the sky that surrounded it. I looked around for anyone that could help, but there was no one. Panicking, I began to run, hoping to get back to the comfort of my house. As I ran, it felt almost like the sun was watching me, like it wanted to hurt me. As I was halfway to my house with tears streaming down my face, a car suddenly pulled up to me. It was my grandma, someone who I loved dearly because of her kindness and carefree nature. But in this dream, she was acting serious because of the current situation, strikingly different from how I usually saw her. She urged me to get into the car, and I took no time doing so, relieved to be with her. We made our way back to my house, and after being reunited with my family, I barreled my way up to me and my sister's room on the second floor. Hiding away up there only quelled my fears a bit, as I knew the sun was still out there. Before I woke up, the last thing I remember doing was staring out the window, looking at that sun in fear, terrified of what was to come. Looking back, I can say with certainty that 4-year-old me was not aware of the existence of solar eclipses or their portrayal in religious/spiritual media. I'm not really religious, only believing in God and not paying much mind to biblical events, but maybe that was the dream was about. I've only really told my close friends and family about it, and one of my friends did mention that it sounded like something out of the Berserk manga series. Another thing to mention is, my mother claims that I've woken her up multiple times about the same black sun dream, even though I do not recall experiencing it more than once. I also stopped having night terrors sometime afterwards. But the weirdness did not stop there, as both my parents reported seeing me sleepwalking when I was younger, which I also eventually stopped doing. Anyways, I think that's all I have to say about it. Snook, if you see this, thank you for reading. Once again, I apologize if it was a bit too long of a story. Alex. Just want to say, I love your videos, and they have prompted me to send this story. I love having your videos on as background noise and just listening to them on their own sometimes, as your narration is so calming, yet spooky at the same time. This is mainly based around sleep paralysis, which probably could have just made up the entire thing, but in the moment, it felt so scary and real. Also, if you read this, sorry, it's so long. No worries. This happened a few years ago. One day, I was out shopping at a charity/antique shop, which to me felt difficult to breathe in, but others said they could breathe in just fine. After a while of looking around, I found myself in the taxidermy section and saw a doll tucked away in the corner, just hidden away from sight, instead of with the other dolls around 5 feet away. For some reason, I felt compelled to this doll and bought it. I brought it home that night and nothing was wrong. I cleaned her up and then placed her next to my bed. That night I woke up in sleep paralysis, which I had like once or twice before I bought this doll. When I looked over, I see this old lady shushing a crying child on the other bed in my room. And for whatever reason, the doll seemed to be looking at me. I don't know if this was just because of the sleep paralysis or if I had moved it in my sleep. Safe to say, I quickly shut my eyes and fell back asleep since I'm not about to stay awake and find out what happens next. The next day, I had to go back to my mother's and brought the doll with me. I set it up on a shelf across my room and made sure it wasn't facing directly at me. I don't know why, but I could never seem to get rid of this feeling that something was always looking at me. I kept repeatedly having sleep paralysis after that. Nothing too special, just not being able to move and being surrounded by darkness. However, about a week after, I had the worst sleep paralysis I've had yet. When I woke up, I didn't realize I was in sleep paralysis, so I got up and walked to the door, only for my hand to phase through the handle. When I grabbed it, I looked back over to my bed and see myself sleeping on it before seemingly teleporting back to my bed. I do the same thing again, still having this weird out-of-body experience, but instead poke my head outside the door, only to be met with pure darkness and the sense of dread. I quickly moved back into my room, and when I turn around, I swear I could see the doll staring at my body in bed again, However, now there was also this large black mass of a creature made of arms and legs, quickly crawling to my body. But I darted back and somehow woke up before it got to me. I moved out of that room for a while because it had gotten flooded, which it had never done before I got the doll. Now I'm back in the room and I'm feeling the same sense of dread and constantly feel like I'm being watched. But every time I think about getting rid of the doll, I just get the feeling that if I do, something terrible will happen. So now I don't know what to do. Hello, Snook. I just want to say that I love your videos. You narrate them so well, and I hope you reach your goal of subscribers. Anyways, into my story. This took place a while when I was around 5 or 6, so me and my little brother, who I think was 3 at the time, were just messing around in the basement. At the time, we had a fairly large bouncy house. It's okay to be jealous. So we were on the bouncy house when my brother had to go upstairs to do something. I said something like, "Okay, go then." For some reason, the light was flickering, which was kind of creepy, not gonna lie. I was on the bouncy house when I heard something. It kind of sounded like someone was trying to talk to me. So I turned off the bouncy house and heard, clear as day, my dad say, "Anna, come up here." So I thought, what the heck, why not? And went up the stairs of the basement. To my absolute horror, my dad was not there. I yelled for him profusely, only to be met with him in his bedroom. I asked how he got up there so fast. He said that he didn't know what I was talking about, and he had been in his bedroom the whole time. I still don't know who or what was trying to call me upstairs. Anyways, thanks for reading. Hope this gets put in a video. Good morning / afternoon or night, Snook, for whenever you see this. Even though I just started watching your videos like literally a few hours ago, I really like your videos and I want to share 3 stories of mine because I don't really have anyone to share them except anyone who's already heard them. I just want to start off and say, every house I've lived in so far has been haunted. When I was younger, we lived in a 2-story house where the landlord practiced voodoo on their land. The second house we moved into, when I started grade 2, also had its fair share of shadows and strange happenings. I would always see a tall man wearing a top hat walking around the yard, and I would often hear voices calling my name, voices of my family members, even when I was home alone, or they were in another room, which made me really paranoid as a kid. The first and most recent story happened when I was 13 to 14 years old. Though I'm 17 now, turning 18 this December, I still remember these stories so vividly because of how unnerving and unexplainable they are. Around April or May of 2020 to 2022, I can't remember the exact date, my mom, my 2 sisters, and I moved into a new apartment. We started bringing our things in during April and finally settled in by the end of April and beginning of May. Anyways, we moved into this brand new apartment located in one of the busier parts of town where more locals lived than tourists. This particular incident happened the very first night we slept there after moving everything in and cleaning up. I was in my mother's room with her, just lying next to her scrolling on my phone. Her bed faced the door in her closet. My older sister walked out of our shared room and went into the kitchen. Right after she went into the kitchen, a short, light-skinned woman with a decrepit, almost blurry, burnt face peeked her head into my mother's room. She had uneven, chopped black hair falling over her shoulders and face, and she wore this eerie smile before dipping back out and disappearing. I know I wasn't hallucinating because immediately after, my mother asked me if I saw the lady. I said yes. I also knew it was my sister playing a prank on us because my sister was dark-skinned, slightly taller, and had short, thick 4B/4C hair, completely different from the woman I saw. My mother caught me off guard when she told me to check it out and to ask my sister if it was her. I looked at her like she was crazy and asked why she was sacrificing me to whatever that lady was. She kissed her teeth and complained about me being scared. In retrospect, anyone would be scared to investigate that, but alas, I got up and went into the kitchen to ask my sister if she peeked into the room. She looked at me confused and said, "No." I felt even more scared and confused because if it wasn't her, then who was it? I reluctantly gathered enough courage to check the bathroom, which was directly next to my mother's room, but no one was there. I also want to mention that the entrance to the manhole was in the bathroom, and you couldn't enter the bathroom without walking directly underneath it. That's part of the reason why I was so hesitant to go in. I still don't know who that woman was, and I haven't saw her since that day. The house had moments of being creepy, and I hate being in the house alone because I always feel like someone is watching me. The second story happened around September to October 2016, after Hurricane Matthew swept through the Bahamas when I was around 8 or 9. I lived in the rural area of Nassau, New Providence, aka Coral Harbor, and Adelaide, which is close to the airport and a resort hotel named Albany. This is the second house I mentioned earlier, where I constantly saw shadows and the voices. The area I lived only had houses on the left-hand side. On the right was just a pine forest and bush, and further in was a shooting range. At least I think there was shooting range because I would constantly hear gunshots in the pines forest. My power was off because Hurricane Matthew knocked down one of the power lines, and it was late in the night, so my mother lit candles around the house for light. My siblings and I were all in her room since we all didn't like the dark. I was laying by her door next to my oldest sister's. Keep in mind, my mother's door was at the end of the hallway, so looking out her door, you can immediately see the fridge and a bit of the island counter. I was staring at the counter and fridge, seemingly stuck in a trance because even my sister, who's sitting in front of me, had disappeared from my line of sight, if she wasn't even there. I kept staring when suddenly a figure of a man in rough cut-up old-fashioned clothing with hair like the 1800s. He was green and see-through for some reason, and his hair was messy and chopped up, and his skin looked like he was decomposing, and even his leg only have mostly bone, flesh, and a bit of skin. But the scary part wasn't the man. It was the fact he was reaching for the knife on the counter that was directly next to a candle. I was absolutely scared shitless and shot up scared out of my mind, seemingly out of sleep paralysis trance, and sister, who was actually still sitting in front of me, asked me what was wrong. I don't remember answering her, but I waited till the morning, or I think a few days later, to tell my mom what I saw. The crazier part was my sister, not the one in front of me, the one from previous story, saw the exact same thing as me and described it word for word. Then one night, almost months after the incident, I had a nightmare of the same scene. When I was in sleep paralysis, it happened again, but this time the man spoke. This time he had the knife in his hand and threatened to kill my family. I woke up in tears and silently cried myself back to sleep and told my mom about the dream in the morning. The third story takes place in the same house as the second one. This one is much shorter than the other two. I was a bit older at the time, probably 10 to 11 years old. I don't remember the exact date or year, I just remember the details. It was the afternoon, and I was in the kitchen washing my dishes and I think making noodles when I looked out the window. The kitchen window looks out the bit of a front lawn, the cesspit, our garage, and the road. I was looking at the garage and the road when this white flowing figure appeared and was walking in the road from the garbage. It wasn't a garbage bag or a plastic bag because it was see-through and walked too much like a human. I stared at it in confusion, in shock, as it just walked down the road before disappearing. To this day, I still don't know what that was. I saw, and quite frankly, I don't really want to find out. I have many more supernatural stories of shadow figures and voices, but the gift or curse I had of seeing them seemed to just disappear as I got older. Maybe because I became a bit skeptic as I got older, but I still got feelings of being watched when I'm home alone, and so I still hear the voices, but rarely. It kind of makes me sad, though, knowing I can't get that thrill of seeing the shadow people anymore. I encountered a monster in my backyard when I was 11. Hello, Snook. I've been watching your videos every night for months as I go to sleep as background noise. I've heard so many spooky true stories and decided it was finally time to send an experience of my own. The main reason I've decided to write this now is just recently I spoke to my friend who had witnessed it as well, and they confirmed that I'm not crazy. Not that I thought I was, but it was nice being reassured. Also, I know I said my backyard, but this incident occurred at my grandma's, though I practically lived there at the time. A fire had happened in the woods of my grandma's neighbor's backyard. For some reason, the fire trucks drove through the woods, leaving a trail in the woods of our backyard. I wasn't there when it happened though, so I don't know for sure. Anyways, a couple weeks later, myself and my cousin, I'll call her Ellis, were walking down an already made trail when we discovered the one the fire truck made. Obviously, a new trail meant more exploring without the awful twigs and sticks getting stuck and the possibility of spraining our ankles. Now, the trail was made in a big U shape, so it had 2 entrances and exits. Myself and her explored the trail, finding some clothes, trash, and an entire carpet. Further on, we saw a huge weeping widow, secluded from everything else. This will be important later. Now, if you don't know what a weeping widow is, it's a tree slanted horizontally as if it's about to fall over. It's known for falling on women's husbands, thus the name Weeping Widow. Anyways, for a couple days we kept playing around together until one day we decided to go on the trail through the separate entrances for the extra thrill of being alone for half the walk. We did get that thrill. I believe I went in before her because she went to go to the bathroom or get water before entering. The walk is nice and scenic. I enjoyed walking through alone because it made me feel brave and I got the peace and quiet of being by myself. I liked being by myself, but that's when I heard twigs snapping to my far right. Obviously, I immediately brushed it off as a squirrel or maybe even a cat since we had lots of them. That was quickly debunked when I heard the snapping of twigs was rapid and getting louder and louder very quickly. I was a bit spooked, but I'm not one to assume very quickly. I'm known for being very stoic and can't be rattled easily. I was desensitized to the idea of horror because I watched it so much growing up. The noise stopped, so I called myself a coward for even stopping and giving it the time of day. I continued my walk, and a couple minutes later, when I saw something in the corner of my eye. It was this figure, a really big figure. I couldn't decide whether it was more animal or human-like, but that didn't really matter because despite that, it was big. It was behind a tree and scurried off when I looked at it. I still didn't overthink it. My mind plays tricks on me sometimes, so I just assumed it was that. Although at this point, I was getting a little paranoid and sped up my pace hoping I would pass by Ellis soon and continue the rest of the trail with her. To no avail. I was finally approaching the Weeping Widow when that's when I heard it again. The twig snapping, except this time it was much, much louder. It only took me maybe 3 seconds to realize that thing was only 20 feet away, if not less, and it was getting close. I ran to the Weeping Widow tree because it was the only tree big enough to possibly hide me, even though it was still an awful hiding spot. As I ran towards the tree, I finally saw it. It was made of skin, just skin. It was patchy and dirty. It was ugly. Its shoulder blades were above its head. It had a kind of a humpback. Its arms were long enough to touch the ground, and they were kind of triangular, like a bat's wing, or better yet, a pterodactyl wing. It was as big as a bear, and it had animal-like hind legs, and it used its arms mostly to run, like a gorilla. But this gorilla was on steroids and just speedballed the 5-hour energy, Red Bull, and washed it down with Adderall. It was fast. I hid behind the tree and stayed as quiet as I could. I peeked over and saw it sprint past and back into the dense woods. Now, I can't run. I have a habit of buckling my legs. It's happened 4 times, and 2 times injuring them badly. I'm asthmatic and anemic. When I tell you I ran for my life, it's an understatement. I wasn't scared of any hole I may step in. Hell, I'm pretty sure I forgot to breathe too, but that didn't even matter. Finally, I saw Ellis and ran up to her explaining we had to leave. I believe she had heard something, but don't see anything or think anything of it. The pure shock of seeing me spring knowing my conditions and seeing me actually frightened her scared her enough to immediately listen to me, and we ran out of there fast. I don't think we've ever been back on that trail again. Now, it's too outgrown to go back on it, even if we wanted to, but I still wonder what it was exactly that I saw that night. Mothman? A skinwalker? Whatever it was, I hope I never have a dangerous encounter with it again. Anyways, Sorry if this story was a bit shorter or not as frightening as the others, but it was my pleasure to write this anyways, and I hope you at least enjoyed reading it. Hey there, Snook. Call me Winnie. Before I start, I just wanted to say how much your videos mean to me between helping me fall asleep and keeping me focused during the workday. I love watching your videos, and please keep doing what you're doing. Even if this story doesn't get featured in one of your videos, I thought it'd be nice to get this off my chest anyway. Man on the subway. I live smack in the middle of New York City. Yep, the Big Apple. A lot of creepy crap goes down around here due to such a high volume of people in a small area and the prevalence of drug use over the past few decades. However, some things just happen to stick out and make you wonder what you might have just seen. My story takes place on the New York subway heading into Manhattan. It was the middle of the day, broad daylight, and I was on my way to Manhattan for a date. I was going to meet a guy I had started seeing pretty recently, and I was really excited. I was a bit nervous to be on the subways alone since crime in my area had spiked pretty drastically at the time, so I brought a friend along with me just for the train ride. We took the bus to the subway, and all was fine for about 12 stops. Then we had a transfer from our line to the Manhattan bound. The second we stepped off the train, the atmosphere shifted. Not in a particularly scary way, more like the world went from completely normal to a sort of dimmer and quieter tone. It was sort of like we had stepped into a Tim Burton movie where everything was just sort of bluish and grayed over, and regular public chatter ceased the second the train doors closed behind us. Anyway, the next train arrived and we sort of brushed off whatever energy we had started to pick up on, and we decided to stand in the middle of a random car since there weren't any seats. After each stop, everyone got off but me, my friend, and a man. I didn't want to stare, but dude gave me the creeps. The man was completely bald and wearing all black, complete with a black trench coat and briefcase. He looked to be at least 6'5". His presence was very imposing, but he appeared emaciated. He was so skinny, his cheeks were hollow, his eyes dark, and his gangly fingers had long, razor-sharp nails. I know I said I wouldn't stare, but I have to admit, I did. I felt like I needed to keep eyes on this guy, or he'd get up and try something. I'm positive he saw me staring from the corner of his eyes, but not once did he look at me or acknowledge it. Now, most New Yorkers know the eyes ahead rule, but I was basically assaulting the guy with my eyes and no reaction. About 2 more stops, and the man suddenly begins to move, after sitting incomprehensibly still the entire ride. He looked down and pulled a penny from his pocket. His movements were so slow and deliberate that I became even more nervous, waiting to see what he would do next. He examined the penny for a few seconds, then placed it very meticulously on the seat next to him, turning and adjusting it to make sure it was placed to his liking. He then pulled a small sachet from the same pocket and gripped his briefcase. 1 stop left. As our train was coming to a stop in Manhattan, I kid you not, this guy looks up at me and shoots me the widest and most eerie grin I had ever seen, as if to say, I know you've been watching. I'm scared shitless at this point, so I grip my friend and run out of the car looking for my date. Sweating, I ask her, dude, what the hell was that? What was that, Winnie? She said. Now I'm getting agitated. I sputtered out, the guy with the penny and the smiling, the big, tall, scary, bald guy? At this point, my friend is looking at me like I'm crazy and says, Win? What guy? We were alone the last 5 stops. My heart sank. Mind you, we were standing, holding onto a pole not even 4 feet from this guy the entire ride. I look back into the window of our car, and the penny is still there, so I know I'm not dreaming. I looked at my date, who walked up excited to go out, and I asked him if he saw anyone else get out of the car after we did. He said we were the only ones to come out of the car. I swear to you, this guy left the car right after us and after placing his special penny. But nobody saw him, but me. I never quite shook the feeling of being watched after witnessing that, but my date went well, and we've been together for almost half a year now. That friend still swears up and down that I must have drummed something up that day, but I know what I saw. I know this story may not be as climactic as many of you had hoped, but I seriously had no explanation for this encounter. Snook, if you or any viewers might have some idea of what happened, please feel free to share. And to that guy on the subway who left a payment at a crossroads, let's not meet. And to be honest, I have no idea. That's creepy as hell, though. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, this guy to stand up, say something to you, do something to you, but for it to be, on your head almost, or a ghost or spirit of some sort, that's really, really weird and interesting. I have no clue what you experienced that day. The penny's interesting. I was still there. I have no clue. Everyone watching, if you guys have any ideas, but I don't. That's super scary, but luckily, you got out unscathed and you're doing all right. That's great, but super creepy. Thank you, and on to the next one. Hey Snook, thank you for taking the time to read this. I love listening to you when I'm playing Minecraft or writing. Keep it up, and I hope you're doing well. This is a true story about me and my brothers growing up when we would go into the woods when we were younger. This story happened when I was roughly 14 or 15 years old. My brothers, E, 12 years old, and N, 10 years old, and I, along with a friend, T, would go up into the woods and explore whenever our parents were working. We lived in a group of project apartments sandwiched between a stretching highway and a small mountain ridge. The apartment that my family lived in was rather small, especially with my rowdy brothers and I, and our mother would make us stay outside for most of the day, otherwise the house would become a complete train wreck. So, exploring the mountains behind our apartment was the natural choice. It was what we did typically during our weekends till the streetlights came on, or Mama called us home. We went up to the woods so often that Mama eventually caved and bought us a very nice set of walkie-talkies to communicate with because we would often explore outside of yelling distance. Throughout the years, my brothers and I would find things in these woods, ranging from homeless tents, hidden katanas, to the one time we found a dead dog with a missing head. Usually, we'd spend the day fixing and expanding upon our fort, but on this day, we strayed from the usual paths we would take and decided to explore a bit. E and T would be in front of the group whenever we went exploring, with N and I trailing not far behind them. After walking forward 20 to 30 minutes, we ended up in an area I hadn't seen before. It was a clearing of sorts full of kudzu. It is a super invasive in my region, so finding a large pocket wasn't unusual to us. Stepping into the clearing made the hairs on my neck stick up, and I started to notice that the forest was much quieter than normal. We made our way across the clearing. As we stepped into the tree line, things went from quiet to almost pure silence. Marching through the underbrush, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, just over the edge of a small cliff. There was a head peeking over a fallen log, looking down at us, watching, and they were completely unaware. They hadn't seen it because they were looking straight ahead. They kept moving towards the cliff when I stopped dead in my tracks. It was like my feet were glued to the ground, and my eyes went wide as I saw it stand up from behind the log and stare right back at me. Panic ran through my body as I screamed, "There's somebody up there!" The boys looked back at me in confusion before looking up to the top of the cliff. The person, or whatever the hell it was gone. "There's no one up there," he spoke. I started to panic even more because I knew what I saw there was something looking down at us. "E, I'm not kidding. There was something up there watching us," I shouted. I think him seeing how serious I had put him on edge. T and N both looked at me skeptically. "I'm telling you what I saw, something." I don't remember what else I said, but eventually T suggested that I stay at the bottom while they go take a look. I watched as they scaled the hill. They made it to the log that I saw hiding behind. Everything in me that I shouldn't be in there. I was unwelcome here. I don't know what it was, but I swear right when they told me nothing was up there, I heard a voice. The voice was quiet, but close. So close that it was almost a couple inches from my ear. "Run," the voice whispered. I screamed loud as I possibly could, that we needed to leave, that I heard something. They ran down the side of the hill towards me, and as soon as they were close enough, I bolted. I ran as fast as I could with the boys hot on my tail. They shouted after wanting an explanation, but I just kept running. I didn't stop till we were almost back at the fort, and Mama's voice rang from the walkie-talkie. She was calling us in for dinner. Later that night, I tried to convince them what I had seen, but they didn't believe in that sort of thing, and were convinced that I was just seeing things. I've been back to that clearing, but I didn't get the same uneasiness that I felt before. Other weird things have happened since then, but I'm sure they are unrelated. I'm now 24, and we've since moved from those apartments to the middle of BFE, Tennessee. Again, thanks for reading, and I'll try to submit some more other scary shit that's happened to me. Hello Snook, I hope you're having a great day. I love listening to your channel while I work or do my paintings. Congratulations on the 500,000 subscribers. Keep it up. Stay awesome. The story I'm about to share might not fall into the fist-clenching scary horror type, but I assure you, this event pumped my adrenaline to the roof when it happened. So, I'll do my best to paint you the full picture, and let you decide. It was early spring 2016, and I was on my way home from work. The route I took was pretty much a daily thing, and it would take around 15 minutes of walking from the bus stop. At the time, I worked in a call center, so I had lots of night shifts as well. This was one of them. The daily routine kind of went like this. Routine and boring stuff, work and commute, getting through all the stress, eager to get back home and spend some time on my hobbies before I go to sleep. Rinse and repeat. So like any other day, I exited my bus. The driver closed the doors and began writing something in his logbook. I guess it was the end of his shift for him as well. It was well past midnight, so there was absolutely no one around. Sure, there was an occasional car driving by, but this is a quiet suburb, and there's almost nothing happening at such late hours. So it's normal, and even expected for nobody to be around. There were 2 local dogs, sleeping in their favorite spot, beside a fast food stand at the bus stop. I crossed the street. I started walking the sidewalk towards my neighborhood. The street was very well lit. The early spring air was soothing and refreshing, and even though I was mentally drained from work, I loved these late night walks, especially during my favorite time of year. Those who work in call centers will truly understand how much a person can appreciate absolute silence and absence of people or crowds and all the noise that comes with that. So, as I was enjoying and appreciating the silence and peace of the night, absorbing the gentle waves of trees in the wind, I caught a quick glimpse of 2 reflective dots, some 50 meters down the road. Before I could even process what I was looking at, this thing, this shadow, began sprinting towards me. And I mean full gallop, straight line directly towards me. It took me a second to realize it was a dog that was approaching me, and I was frozen in my place. My mind racing, what should I do? While the dog was closing the distance at full speed. There's nowhere to run. To my left side was a tall fence, and across the street was an open field. Empty road and a few small buildings, business buildings, locked up and closed. There were no large stones I could pick up and throw, no people to ask for help, no cars passing by. Nothing and nobody, except me and the dog. So, in the last brief moment I had, I reached quickly in my handbag and grabbed my keys, clenched them in a fist, preparing myself to stab him if I got jumped or bitten. I never had trouble with dogs. I love dogs. I was never attacked or felt threatened by any dog except at this moment. I took a deep breath right before I thought he would jump me, and maybe sure, I held onto those keys as firmly as I could, my other hand raised slightly to protect my neck or face if it came to that. And so suddenly, there he was. Now, you need to understand just how hopeless this situation looked like. This dog was no ordinary dog. He was huge. I am average height for a girl, about 165 centimeters or 5 foot 4 feet, and he was well above my waistline, one of the largest dogs I've ever seen. What chance did I even ever have here? He could carry me with his teeth if he wanted to. His coat was black as the abyss itself, and the only sounds now were his claws in the asphalt, his heavy breathing, and my racing heartbeats. And then, he came right up to me, stood right there beside me. He started a deep, low growl, and then began the barking. Bone-chilling, hellhound level, nightmare fuel, monster dog barking. However, I was still intact. Stunned and overcome with fear, yes, but I was not attacked. The dog had his eyes fixated on something behind me. I turned my head slowly to look, but there was nothing there. I followed his gaze to where he was looking, and I couldn't see anything. The other two dogs at the bus station were still within my line of sight. They were now on their feet and looking in our direction, not engaging in the barking, just standing there, observing. If there was a person this dog spotted who ran away, I would definitely hear footsteps or running because it was just that quiet. No living souls around us. No one approaching. No one running away. Nothing. And yet this dog was barking with such determination, I could feel it resonate within my own body, as it echoed through the dead, silent night. I stood there, with this giant black dog for I don't know how long, 30 seconds? A minute? Longer? The entire time I scanned every inch of the street trying to catch whatever it was that this dog was barking at. If it was the two dogs he didn't like, wouldn't he be looking their way? But they weren't even doing anything. They were peacefully sleeping before this all started, and he wasn't focused on them at all. Then he went silent too. As the last echo dispersed into the night, he slowly turned his head towards me and looked straight into my eyes. This made me snap back into reality, and as my stun lock was fading away, I had a single thought in my mind. I just wanted to get back home. So I resumed walking. The dog immediately followed. And no, this wasn't my first time ever being followed by a dog, but it never happened like this. Usually, dogs approach you with wagging tails. They try to get your attention, give you those pleading looks and hopes for food. They lick your hand and follow you. But they also do their own thing. They run around, sniff the ground, mark their territory. They let you advance in front of them a little. And then they catch up with you again. You know, classic dog behavior. Well, not this one. The entire time he matched my steps, walked right beside me. His body literally pressed against my leg. I never attempted to move away. I didn't speed up. I didn't try to push him away. I just accepted it. I concentrated on my breathing, trying to chase away the fear I felt. I did not want this dog to smell it on me or give him any reason to feel threatened or aggravated. On occasion, I've only spoken to him in the most gentle, quiet voice. Good boy. Thank you. Good boy. He never reacted to my voice, never looked at me, didn't waggle his tail, just walked beside me like my own shadow. 2 or 3 times he briefly looked back, but no more barking, no reactions. He simply followed. It seemed like an eternity, but I finally reached my building, and at the bottom of the stairs he stopped to follow. I entered my building and looked back through the glass doors. He looked me straight in the eyes. We stood like that, in place for a few seconds, and once again I gently said, "Thank you," before I turned around and finally went home. I didn't turn back to look anymore, but I just knew that he stood there, watching me the entire time for as long as I was within his first line of sight. When I got home, I immediately went to my window to see if he was still there. I was about to bring down some food to him, for hopes of friendship if our paths ever cross again, but he was gone. I never saw this dog before that night, and I never saw him again either. And like I said, I frequented this route almost daily. This was the only interaction I ever had with this absolute black beast of a dog. When my thoughts calmed down, I realized I was being protected from whatever he saw that night. I will never know what it was because I swear there was nothing there, but he knew something, didn't he? Whatever it was, I will always remember that night and be grateful, as I'm sure my night could have taken a much darker turn if he wasn't there to be at my side. Thank you again, good boy. I hope you had a good life. And thank you all for listening. Be safe, always. Anna. Mirror on the wall. This story is 100% true. Feel free to comment. Let's begin. From a very young age, I was always a bit strange, a bit peculiar. I was an extremely sick child. I almost died twice due to pneumonia and was diagnosed as a chronic asthmatic. My parents thought I wouldn't make it, but for whatever reason, I survived. I honestly don't know why I survived. I think about it often. Why did I make it when others didn't? It eats me up at times. Anyway, I have this theory. My soul was between both worlds, the living and the spiritual. When I fully came back to the living, something came back with me. I've always had a weird view of the world around me, seeing things others couldn't. I still do to this day, and I'm 31 years old. The first incident I can recall happened when I was around 5 years old. My parents and I were visiting my grandma at the time. I remember having morning tea with everyone at the table. I think my grandma had made homemade pancakes with jam and cream. I told my parents I needed to use the bathroom, so I left the kitchen, turned right, and went straight down the hall. To the right was the bathroom. For whatever reason, my grandma had a huge round mirror placed directly across from the bathroom, hanging on the wall. Back then, I was terrified of closing toilets, bathrooms, or bedroom doors. It freaked me out, so naturally, while doing my business, I left the bathroom door open, fully facing the mirror. Suddenly, I had this eerie feeling that someone was watching me. I looked at the mirror and saw an old man staring back at me. I screamed bloody murder. My parents came running down the hall, panic-stricken. I was in tears. They asked what had happened, and all I could say was, there was a man in the mirror. Naturally, my parents thought I was imagining things. They carried me back to the living room and held me until I calmed down. Once I was calm, my grandma asked me, "What did the man look like?" I was silent for a while. I glanced around the room, and my eyes stopped at a small photo on my grandma's coffee table. In the photo were my grandma and a man with their arms wrapped around each other. I pointed to the man in the photo and said, "That was the man." Silence filled the room. My parents asked if I was sure, and I was adamant it was him. It turned out that the man in the photo was my granddad. He had died long ago before I was even born, due to a severe illness after returning from the war. I guess my granddad wanted to meet me since he never got the chance. He never visited me again, but I've always believed he was protecting and guiding me. Things only got stranger as I grew older. If you'd like to hear more paranormal stories, let me know. I have plenty to share. Thank you for reading. And thank you so much for sharing. That was interesting. Definitely feel free to share more stories in the future. Send them to the email. Thank you so much. And that wraps up today's video and some frightening, scary stories. Comment down below what you thought about this video. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I love reading the subscriber submitted stories. If you'd like to see more, please comment down below or send in emails, because these videos only continue if I keep getting emails. So email me your scary stories and it'll probably be in a video. Thank you so much to everyone who's watching. Thank you so much if you watched at the end of this video. It means so much. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 1 million subscribers, so please subscribe. And it also just helps more than you know. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.